97ontheticket.com. I am Evan Jenkins, and anybody that knows me knows that this is a huge, huge interview for me, as I am being joined by the designer of many Air Jordans and a senior designer at Nike. He is Tate Kuerbis. Tate, how's it going, man?
Good, man. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you have a mutual friend with me and Jamie Samuelson, and that's how I got hooked up with you. And Jamie said, Evan, I got the perfect guy for you. He designed shoes at Nike. And I'm like, hold on. Why have you held off on telling me this for this long that I've known you? And not only do you design for Nike, but you design Air Jordans. To me, that is my personal favorite. I'll never forget the first time in fourth grade when I saw somebody wearing the Air Jordan 5. I was sold, and ever since, I've been collecting, I've been buying, I've been wearing. And so I want to ask you first off, how did you get into designing Nikes?
Sure. Actually, it's a little bit of a funny story. I went to design school, never thought about designing sneakers, never even thought that someone actually sits there and designs sneakers. But a friend of mine got an internship at Nike. I was still in school, and he had to come back and finish his last term of school. And when he came back, he started talking about Nike, and he brought all these crazy, I guess they were kind of prototype Nikes. And at the time I looked at them and I was like, this was way back in 1995. I looked at them and I was like, man, those are really cool. Someone actually sits there and designs these. He's like, yeah. And they're actually looking at maybe hiring some more people. So I gave him my portfolio, and next thing I knew, I went straight out of school and started designing shoes for Nike.
Okay, so that's unbelievably amazing. Do you remember I'm sure you do, but the first shoe that you had your hands on designing?
So when I first started at Nike in 95, I went straight into Nike basketball. And so I was working on, back then, there was a lot of, that was when, Nike basketball was coming out with some crazy stuff like the tempos, foamposites. And actually the funny thing is, one of the first projects I worked on was a Dennis Rodman shoe, the Worm.
So you did the one with the flap that goes over and ties up the side?
It was the same tooling, different upper. It had a zipper on it with like a big ring. They didn't make a lot of them. Unfortunately, I never got to meet Dennis Rodman, but I was trying to take some inspiration from him and his personality. And I thought it'd be cool to put rings on the shoe and a zipper. And it was pretty out there for sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So I need to get into the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Michael Jordan. Believe it or not, I got into this industry in hopes that I could just stand by the guy. I was never lucky enough to do that, as he started playing with the Wizards near the end of his career, and that's when I was just getting into the business. But what makes me ask you about that is you actually designed the last shoe that Michael Jordan wore on the basketball court. That was his original. I know he was wearing some Air Jordan 3s when he was with the Wizards, but the Air Jordan 18 was the final shoe that he wore. A, how cool is that your hands are all over that? And B, I need to know what it goes into designing a shoe for what I consider the greatest basketball player ever, not only for the court, but then you realize how big of a just explosion that he's had on the marketplace, where these aren't just for basketball courts now. You see Jordans worn in weddings, which I may have done, and you see them every day on the street. So it's just, how cool is it that you're the designer of the last shoe, and then how is it working with him?
I mean, at the time I had no idea it was going to be his last shoe. I was there at Nike and Jordan watching Tinker design most of his amazing shoes. To follow in Tinker's footsteps was already pretty stressful. And then Wilson Smith worked on the 16 and 17. And then it got passed to me and they said, well, you're going to work on the Air Jordan 18. And I was pretty young still at the time. I think I had only been at Nike for seven years at the most. So not a lot of time. I was still trying to learn the whole thing about footwear design. And next thing I know, here I am with the Air Jordan on my lap. And you know, at that time, he did come back. He was playing for the Wizards, and really, what happens is you go and you have a conversation with Michael. I remember to this day, I think I was he was training. I was in a locker room with him, and he started talking about a shoe that he drives his Ferraris in. It was like a driving shoe, a little loafer. You know, Michael's really into cars, always has been into cars. And he told me one thing. He's like, maybe you can design an Air Jordan that looks like it's one piece of leather, super clean. And I thought about that, and that's kind of what I took back to the drawing board and went back and just started sketching and sketching and sketching. And that's really where the Air Jordan 18 design kind of came from. It was just a conversation with Michael, and getting inspired by him and listening to what he was talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of unique too, because a lot of the Jordans have kind of a narrower toe, especially like the 6 and the 7. Yeah. And yours is almost more, I don't know, square, if that's the right way to do it.
So yeah, that last was different, and that really evolved from the Air Jordan 17. The same last was used for that one. I thought, well, I think I'll use that again for the 18, just to make it look different.
Now, what about the flap that you put over the laces there? Because to me, that was super unique in respect that it covered the entire laces. We've seen Nikes, probably when you started there, that used to have, I don't even know how to explain them, but there was a strap that you could put on the shoe. I don't know if you remember that, but you could buy them in all different colorways. But that right there is something completely different. And if people want to know what we're talking about, it's right over Tate's left shoulder there.
Yeah. I can actually grab it too. That went back to the whole conversation about trying to create something that looked almost as if it was just one piece of leather wrapping the foot. And I think for Jordans, they always try to be iconic, something that you can remember over the test of time. And they're also, they tend to be simple and unique. There's always something unique about them, when you look at them, you think, well, why did they do that? Or rememberable, like you could remember it by that flap, I guess, covering the laces. And really just wanted to keep it super clean and put as much leather around the shoe as possible. And then it just really plays off of the bottom of the shoe where you see the blue. That was the idea of, like, I just really wanted to make Michael look like he was floating on the ground, like he was hovering, because he spent so much time in the air. And the Air Jordan just really wanted to highlight that as well.
Yeah, and it's so wild what you say too, because even though the Air Jordan's not necessarily like been a bold logo on the shoe, it's never been that way. They've always been clean, like you said, but you always knew exactly what that shoe was when you first saw it. You knew it was the Air Jordan. And now you also designed the Air Jordan 19, which to me was one of my favorites, because that was one of the first shoes I ever remember putting on that had the sock within the shoe that was built in. And I thought it was awesome. I bought the lows of the 19 though with the Carolina blue, and I thought it was so freaking cool that you could pull the sock up or you could tuck it into the shoe and make it look more low profile. What went into the thinking of doing that?
Well, yeah, the 19 was a whole nother beast of a project that really started out with the idea of thinking that you wouldn't need to have laces on the shoe. We never got it that far, but the material that we used in the front that wrapped up the shoe was really unique and something we had never used on footwear before. I always think when Michael retired in the 18s, hopefully he didn't retire because of the shoe. But I wonder what it would have been like to see him wear the 19s, because they were so different.
Well, Rip Hamilton wore them, Carmelo wore them. And that's what I kind of want to ask you. I don't know how much input you have with this, but when Jordan was playing with the Bulls, the only players you ever saw wearing his shoes where
Yeah.
in his final 2 seasons, you'd see Ron Harper or you'd see Luke Longley wearing them. When did it become, I don't know if okay is the right word, but for opposing players to wear that player's sneaker? I remember Jordan wore a pair of pennies one time because the
Yeah.
league was all pissed off about the 11s. And so he
Yeah.
had to wear a pair of pennies. But is it like, do these players approach Jordan Brand that are already athletes like, I want to wear the signature shoe? Or do they more or less, like Carmelo had his own for a while there, but he's really the only one up until like Zion, which we'll get into here a little bit later.
Yeah. I mean, back when Michael was playing, I think it was specifically Michael wearing the Air Jordan. But I think in his later years, and I wasn't a part of this conversation, but I think they saw Michael. They knew that he was going to be leaving the game, but they wanted the Air Jordan to continue. So I think they felt like it was okay to start seeding it on other players.
Well,
Now, players want to wear retros all the time, and which is fine. But now we're kind of at the same stage where Michael's kind of fading out of the light, but we want to keep him embodied in the shoe. So we're putting it on people like Zion. We're putting it on all these up and coming players as well.
yeah, one big one is Luka, and his Air Jordan 1s came out maybe 2 weeks ago. I may or may not have had to purchase those as well. But, okay,
Yeah.
so you designed Jordan's final shoe, and now you have your hands on Zion Williamson's first shoe. I need to know if, I guess it's a two-parter. A, how do you approach them about that? Because I see Blake Griffin and Jason Tatum and all these guys are also wearing it. But the color scheme that he came up with, the Bayou that came out, do you have your input on all the color schemes? Or is this like where the players are, I want to see that color or this color on them?
I mean, fortunately, I work on a team of color designers, material designers, great marketing people, sports marketing people. So in those meetings, there is a lot of back and forth discussions about what he likes, what colors he likes, what stories he wants to tell. And then it's really about the team going back and figuring out what we want to express. How do we express his personality? And I think that really came out in that Bayou color that we did. And a lot of it is just talk from Zion, and also input from our color designers and material designers, just kind of coming at it and bringing it all together into one.
So how many pairs of shoes do you think that you design in a calendar year? Like how long does from the start of the process, from when you first meet with Michael to where you put it on paper to where it's actually being produced?
There. Typically it's 18 months.
Okay.
Sometimes a more advanced project, we start a little bit earlier, but typically from briefing to pen on paper, it's about 18 months till you see the shoe in the market being sold.
Now I need to know about like player editions and samples that you see from some of these huge collectors that get their hands on these exclusive shoes.
Yeah.
Are these something that is done within like Nike back channels where their rep gets them and they send them to them? Or are these things that are being worked on that people might have been like, I don't know if these will sell? Or maybe Michael himself were like, I don't want to put my name on that.
I honestly, sometimes I don't know where those come from. I don't know if they're created outside of Nike. Sometimes there's a lot of people doing custom shoes out there. Even you see on the football field now, you see where athletes are taking retro or unique shoes and putting it on a cleat, and that's sometimes that's not us. That's going to some guy who can customize a shoe and put it all together, which is crazy to me to think that you're going to be wearing that on a football field and it might just blow up or explode. But sometimes shoes get out. Other times I think it's people just being creative about how they can find something really unique that no one else has.
Yeah, and that's even more so now, like I was talking about earlier, just how it's just taking over pop culture with the sneakers. Like you gotta have the right ones. And for instance, like right now, you see big rappers like the Travis Scott Air Jordan 1s, the 4s and the 6s. These things sell for crazy amounts of money, and they're so limited. do you have any input on how you guys at Nike decide to make a certain shoe limited compared to like the Air Jordan 5 that came out last weekend, and you can get them at any Foot Locker, Finish Line, Champs, Dick's, whatever it might be? Do you have any input on that?
Not really. I mean, there's definitely an art and science to that, and I don't get in that space at all. I think it's just a matter of we're really smart about what shoes we want to grow and sell a lot of, and what shoes we want to keep really special. And a lot of those athletes and musicians that we work on with collabs or whatever that we want to keep more special, we definitely want to keep those numbers a lot smaller. You can see over the years that we have launched a lot of AJ11s. That's a very special sneaker.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we want to make money. We want to get that shoe out there, but we don't want to put so much out in the market that it floods the market and it loses its uniqueness or specialness.
And I thank you for that, because personally, the 11 is my favorite shoe. I've waited 8 hours in line one time to get the Concords before everything was done online. And I need to know from you, Tate, what is your favorite shoe that if you're going to go out just on a regular day, what are you putting on your feet?
It's pretty simple. I mean, I've always been an AJ1 guy just because it's so versatile. You can wear it with jeans, shorts, whatever. Super casual, low profile. I'll wear AJ1 any day of the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel the same.
I got to ask you.
Okay, so I have a few favorites where I love the one, and only in the last few years have I actually started wanting them to wear them because they are such a comfortable shoe. I mean, the 3 is phenomenal. I think the 4 is phenomenal. The 5, like I said, was the first one that made me fall in love.
Yeah.
I just went and bought the Defining Moments 6s that came out because I missed that package when you guys used to roll those out together. I think the Taxi 12 is one of my all-time favorites just because, well, yet again, it brings me back to my childhood to seeing kids walk into school with those shoes and skip school because I would come out on a Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah.
And wear those in. But my all-time favorite is the 11, and it's the Concord or it's the Bread, which I call the playoff 11s. What do you guys at Nike call those?
The Breads.
Okay. Yeah. Because I've always associated those with the playoffs to me.
Yeah. So you must have a pretty big closet to keep all these shoes.
Well, I have them in a basement, and they're all on shelves. So I mean. But ever since I could convince my father into getting these for me, because you're never going to beat him. So why do you want to wear those? And he also hated them being from Detroit. Me as a young, naive kid, I saw all the cool dunks and the cool sneakers. I was like, that's my dude, and never wavered ever since. It actually made me kind of hate the bad boys, which is, faux pas to say around here. But now you've also worked with like Richard Hamilton. He wore those signature Jordans because he was, not only in Washington with Jordan, but then he came here to the Pistons and continued to be a Jordan guy. I was lucky enough to golf with him, and he said, you wouldn't believe my collection. So I want to know, what is the biggest collection that you've seen from someone?
Well, I work with a couple people that they pay a monthly storage fee. They have like storage units because they ran out of room at their homes to keep the shoes. So they have these storage units where it's just packed full of shoes. And I think to myself, like, what was I thinking? Why didn't I collect shoes? Because I honestly, I was surrounded by shoes. I worked designing on shoes day in and day out. I just didn't think about collecting shoes. And now I kick myself because I could probably, put a kid through college with all those shoes. But I honestly just started collecting shoes the last maybe 4 or 5 years. So my collection is pretty small. But I would say walking into Michael Jordan's closet and seeing all of his shoes and how they're displayed is probably the most amazing thing I've seen.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that because you always heard the stories how he would wear a new pair every single game. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's doing that. But now even his son Marcus has opened up the Trophy Room store that's out in Florida.
Yeah.
Does you ever get a call from him where he's like, I'm looking for help? Because there's like these Air Jordan 5s that came out, the Trophy Room edition. The all red ones are super hard to get and exclusive. Do you have input on any of those? Are you just mostly where it seems like you've taken off from the 18 and you've brought Air Jordans into the future?
Yeah, I really just focus on performance. We do have a team that does collabs and lifestyle and all those shoes and all that product. So they're working with people like him to see what shoes he's going to get versus other stores, et cetera, like that. But for me, I'm mostly just focused on performance.
So I need to ask if you've been starstruck by this man that walks the halls of Nike. The one time I literally have been like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe I was standing next to him was at a Michigan State football game when your
Yeah,
guys' boss, Phil Knight, was there. And I
yeah.
was like, that's the man right there. How cool is Phil Knight? Do you get to work with him directly?
Not so much. I do miss the days where footwear design was in one building on campus, and his office was on the same floor as where we sat. So sometimes you'd see him coming up the elevator, going to his office. And I was just like, that's pretty special to see the guy that had the brains, the nerves, the guts to start this company and to see how big this company has gotten, how many athletes we've changed. Always an amazing thing when you think about it.
See, personally, I think what you guys are doing is the most important work out there because of the fandom that I've had, and I've been so brand loyal to Nike since I was a kid. Because if you think
Yeah.
about it, being born in '83, so around '93 is Jordan's as big as he can. I'm 10 years old. Ken Griffey Jr. has his own signature sneaker, which I believe. Did you used to work in Nike baseball?
I did one more towards the end when he was kind of in close to retirement. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I just wonder if you have any input, like, so the Griffey sneaker was huge to me with
Yeah.
the Seattle colorway and everything, and then they came back out a few years ago with the strap around the ankle and the big 24 on it. Other than Mike Trout, you really don't see Nike attached to baseball, other than what they're wearing normally on their cleats. Do you think that it's baseball with marketing, or are cleats so like they almost can't be refined? Does that make sense to you? Like it's how it is
Yeah,
with cleats.
I think the signature business and cleated, and especially maybe baseball, is a little bit different. And I didn't spend a lot of time in baseball, so I couldn't really talk too much about how they how they organize their line and what players get signature shoes, etc., and how they sell versus other shoes. So yeah, I'm not really sure.
Okay, now I also saw that you worked with Nike Tennis, and
Yeah,
Federer and Nadal. I mean, Nadal has his own logo and everything. His gear
yeah.
sells out instantly when it hits Nike.com. But there's one shoe with Roger Federer, and I'm just wondering if you had a hand in it. It's a kind of a combination with the Air Jordan 3. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Ballers, but in the very beginning, in the
Oh
intro,
yeah, 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 yeah,
they show that shoe, and it's
yeah.
like one of the most exclusive, and it came out on the sneakers app maybe 2 years ago now. Did you have a hand in that at all?
No, that was mostly Tinker. He worked on that shoe with Roger after I left tennis.
Okay.
And it was a super popular shoe. And then Roger was always a Jordan fanatic, so they decided to do kind of like this mashup. And yeah, it was cool. I wish I had one of those shoes as well.
So when you walk through the halls of Nike in Oregon, I've always seen photos. I've seen a few videos. One of my
Yeah.
colleagues went out there and went to the store. Is it everything that I dream it is to be?
Well, you know what? You gotta get on a plane one of these days when it's safe to fly and all that, and come out, and I'll take you around campus, and we'll have lunch, and you can have a whole day soaking it in.
Abs-
It's really amazing. And typically I don't get the sense of that until I give someone who hasn't been there a tour, and their jaws dropped. And then I realize, because I see it day in and day out for the last 25 years, but it's like a college campus. There's people doing sports at lunch. I mean, there's just so many things, so much history there to look at. It's pretty amazing.
No, I don't want to keep you too much longer. But as I told you on the phone yesterday, I could pick your brain for hours here, but I won't do that. I'll only ask a few more questions. But so you design the shoe that Zion's wearing for his first year. How big of a sense of pride? I don't know if you guys watch this. Like I run a website so I can look at analytics and see exactly how my product is performing. Now those Zions, they sold out lickety split. Do you guys know that when it happens? And is that like just a huge sense of pride?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he won't get his own signature shoe until next year, until next season. And I'm not going to be working on that signature shoe, but we did put him in the Air Jordan 34s, which is funny because when we worked on the Air Jordan 34, we had no idea we were even going to sign Zion. So the 34 was already designed and tested and done before it got onto Zion's feet. And if you see Zion playing, you know that he is a beast.
Yeah.
And thank God the shoe worked for him. We had to do a few adjustments for him, but it was fun to see him wearing Air Jordan for his first
Yeah.
season.
And you also have another big athlete that just signed with you guys recently in Luka Doncic.
Yeah, that's gonna
And
be huge.
huge, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's an unbelievable player. I was lucky enough to travel with the Pistons when they played him in Mexico City, and people went absolutely crazy over Luka. And that's a huge, huge deal. But now, how often do you get a phone call to your cell phone and say, hey, I just saw these Travis Scott's drop. How do I get a pair?
I get that quite a bit, and I have to be honest. Like, I just tell them, you know what, I don't even have them, so good luck. Yeah.
Now, do you miss the days? I don't, like you said, you only got into collecting a few years ago, but like the waiting out at a store instead of this crazy internet thing. The reason I ask that is, people are geniuses and they create these bots, and whatever way they get these shoes instantly added to their cart. And, other times the sneakers app is wonderful and they do a drawing and you can win these shoes. When I say win, you're still buying them. But do you guys ever kind of wish that it went back to that? But I mean, at the same time, it's like the internet is so cool that you can sell them on all these different sites.
Yeah, I think we've actually, the whole sneaker culture has created a whole other economy, which is pretty amazing that, we have StockX now. I mean, who would have thought you would have a platform like that where you could literally put in the price you bought the shoe and then see how much the shoe is worth today. And like you said, the sneaker app, we still do have launches at stores where you see people lining up. Even like a month ago, there was, when we're supposed to be social distancing, and then there's a huge line to get retros. So I think no matter what, people want their retros, they want their shoes, and they'll figure out a way to get them.
Which Jordan are you the most proud of designing?
I was thinking about that today because I thought you might ask that. I do kind of have a fond thing for the Air Jordan 18, just because it was such a huge project for me at the time, and it was really a lot on my shoulders. And I remember the process I went through during that year, and I still look at it. I've done a lot of shoes, and some shoes I look at, I'm like, what was I thinking? That's just a bad design. But I still look at the 18, and I think, I feel like it's kind of stood the test of time.
Well, I would personally like to thank you, because there was a while there where I absolutely loved Air Jordan 13. I loved him. It was his final shoe. And then the 14 came out and people were like, ooh, I don't know about that. And that was the first one where I was like, I don't think I can do it because it's kind of odd. But then the shoes that you brought back, man, it just brought back Air Jordan to me. It was more subtle. It wasn't trying to recreate the wheel or anything. So I want to thank you for that, because to me, it brought Jordan back. He wasn't retired. He was there, and the shoes were just as cool as they were when he was a young player.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think these days what we're trying to do is really win back the courts and really push performance foremost. Of course, we want the shoe to cross over to sneaker culture off the court, but we're really focusing on creating the best performance basketball shoe on the court.
All right. Now, I forgot one thing as I was just scrolling through all the amazing Jordans that you designed. You did the 19, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the laser etching that you did on the flap that comes over the laces, whose idea was that? Because it blew me away when I first saw it, all the little 23s and everything. I remember that shoe was so hard to get, and I wanted it so bad, and I couldn't at the time because I didn't have the money. But what went into that laser etching? Because then we saw laser etched 4s, and we saw that more on other shoes. But I personally believe that was the first time I saw it on an Air Jordan.
I'm trying to think on the. I don't know if it was it on the 19, the laser. The laser.
Yeah,
etching?
like the little flap. It was like just like a design almost on the white, black, and red ones.
Huh. That was. I had to think about what that was. I mean, laser. I know
Here,
the
let me
laser.
see if I can share this screen real quick so
Yeah.
you can see it. Can
Oh,
you
that was
see?
on. So that was the 20. That wasn't the 19.
Is it not?
No. That.
Oh, you know what? That's the 20. I'm sorry. I was looking
Yeah.
at it below. Sorry, that's my fault.
I was confused too. I was like, wait.
Foot Locker has their website weird. So you did not have any hand in that one then, right?
No, that was Tinker and Mark Smith, and laser was something that Mark Smith was really pushing, and that was like a totally futuristic thing back then, and he was really going hand in hand with Tinker to do the graphics and stuff like that and make this shoe special. So that was something that he had his hand in.
Okay, cool. Now, I see, like I said, I could pick your brain forever, but I'll let you go. He's Tate Kuerbis. He's designed Air Jordans. He's worked in Nike tennis, Nike baseball. It sounds like you've absolutely done it all. I can't thank you enough for your time. I hope I can pick your brain another time, because what you're doing is something I've always dreamed of, just working with sneakers and Nike. Like I said, I've been brand loyal, whether it's Nike golf or anything. So I personally want to thank you for what you do. And I think it's awesome that you've gotten to work with Michael Jordan on the shoes that made shoes what they are today, personally, I believe.
Well, cool. I appreciate you being a big fan and supporting Nike and Jordan. And next time you're out, well, I'll take you around and we'll have a good time.
Awesome. Thank you. And do you have any stories about Jamie Samuelson being a goof in high school that you want to share? Because that head of hair.
I just remember him being kind of a nerd. Maybe he's a sports nerd now, but now Jamie was a great friend of mine, and I'm glad that he made it into The Last Dance and I didn't. So I'm kind of actually jealous.
Yeah, what the heck? I mean, maybe we'll see some Wizards at the end there where we can see your shoes on The Last Dance, but that head of hair, I asked him the other day, I'm like, have you ever changed your hairstyle? Because you had it back then.
He looks exactly the same.
Exactly. Well, Tate, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing more and more of your work, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, no problem. Take care.